Well, Dana, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with you today. Why don't we start with, will you tell me a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I am doing energy healing. So I'm an author, content creator, speaker, energy healer. And that started as really a passion project and a necessity because my own healing was being unaddressed by the conventional system. So I needed to start being curious and trying to figure out how to heal myself, which turned into healing other people.
When you're talking about energetic healing, tell me a little bit more. What is this looking like? What does this mean?
I would think there's a couple layers to this. So I use a model called the five koshas from yoga, and it looks at the body in sort of concentric layers. So even though I do energy healing, what I do doesn't really replace other things, it's another layer. So we have a physical body to start with, which is where most of us live in materialism. But inside of that body, we have an energy body, which I think most people would think of in meridians, chakras, nadis, sort of this esoteric version of seeing an energy body. But really, in physics, it is just the electrical impulses in the body. It is that thing that animates us, right? That
Hmm.
we breathe when we live and we exhale and then we die. What is that thing, that energy that sort of is the body?
Yes.
And as we go more inside to that, it is a mental body and
Hmm.
then an emotional or a wisdom body, and finally up to a bliss body, or what a lot of people would think of as our light body. And
Okay.
so energy medicine is kind of looking at all of these things. So it's going
Yes.
all the way to the top and saying, what is the architect, the blueprint, the
Hmm.
information, and
Yeah.
how does that govern the energy in the body? And then those instructions that the energy is giving, what biochemistry processes is it then doing? So it's kind of looking at everything from the light waves turning into particles based on intention and thought.
Perfect. And just so we're in agreement here, I just want to clarify, have you seen like Alex Gray paintings?
I have not.
You have not. Well, I wish I could turn my camera around because I got several of them right around in the
Okay.
room here. He draws this. He draws the physical body with the skeleton, the muscle structures, but then the energetic body, the emotional, the mental, and then the spiritual or the energetic that you're talking about there, the bliss. So it's a visual conception of what this looks like.
I would love to see this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
we'll
I'll look
look
it
at it.
up.
We'll look.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, this is great because in traditional healing practices, when somebody has something like cancer, let's say, we don't look at, and I'm talking like traditional, like indigenous, going back thousands of years, they don't really look at the physical symptoms that are happening. Those are symptoms of something bigger that's happening. And it's usually in the emotional, mental, or spiritual part of our body. So this is pretty similar to what you're talking about.
It is, and I actually think, like, as I started to study these things, I found most of my answers started in ancient traditions. So
Hmm.
yoga, Buddhism, Taoism,
Yeah.
Gnosticism, and what I really honestly believe that all science is doing now is just revalidating things that we knew for 5,000 years. But
Yeah.
at some point, as we got too smart for ourselves and we started to use science to measure and quantify, some of these more ethereal or subtle energy things, they became difficult to look at and to measure. So we kind of dropped them
Yeah.
as not being important. And we just only went to the chemistry of the body, to the mechanisms, to, categorizing things and label what we would call our left brain dominance,
Hmm.
right? We
Sure.
really just went into where everything had to be described, written, and categorized, as opposed to felt, lived, intuited, or
Yeah.
just a relationship between things.
Yeah, there's not really much room in science for that because it can't be quantified or measured. It's not material. And yeah, I think that we've lost a lot of what it takes or what it means to be human. And science is just barely grasping that in some regards today, or just starting to recover those areas. So this was crucial or essential in your personal journey. Tell me about how you came to figuring these old traditions or finding these older traditions, and how did you apply them to your own life?
Well, I think I always, was a little bit, like, sort of a trailblazer, rebellious, curious on the outside. So I think I right away when I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, knew that there was no way I was taking a conventional path. I already
Right.
had this heavy skepticism. But even on that journey, and the reason I liked that model of the 5 koshas is because even though it's not a ladder, it's not a protocol, it is the way I came across all of these things. So
Mhm.
even when I first started, say, with the practice of yoga or meditation, and I was still doing it in a physical reality way. So I was still like yoga was stretching to me and to just have a flexible body, right? It was just complementing me being a runner. And meditation was something I forced myself to do to kind of check off a list. But as I realized that like diet, exercise, all of these things weren't really helping me that much, I plateaued after a certain increase. I discovered energy medicine through pulse magnetic field therapy and then bioresonance scans later. And it was like turning the lights back on to me. But then again, I plateaued and then realized, okay, I need something more. And this is when I started looking at, well, like if energy doesn't sustain in your own body, because we should, right? Like normal, healthy people create our own energy. We're constantly recharging ourselves. So in my case, if I'm always sick and I'm always depleted, like where are all these energy leaks coming from? And then that was when I really started to get into the nervous system and emotional regulation and this mental loops and emotional component of healing. And that took me, again, very far, but I still didn't get all the way until I really actually hit that spiritual part, and till I really got in touch with, like, what is source and what am I in the oneness of all of creation, and once I understood all of those things, I actually stopped fighting my disease, actually, and I don't even try to overcome it anymore. I'm not even really so worried about it. It's just kinda there with me. Sometimes it acts up, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of like a compass to let me know if I'm off path or I've maybe done too much. But once I got kind of that top level, I find now that even all the other things at the bottom, they're not so consequential anymore. You don't really have to stick 100% to your diet or workout routine if at the top you're like happy and you're centered and you're okay with yourself. Then everything else downstream kind of just easily falls into place without quite so much effort.
What does that look like? So when you're having like flare-ups from your MS or something's going on, what does it look like to be centered and in line like you're talking about?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll take a very recent, and it's amazing to me because I do energy healing now for years, and I work on other people, but yet it's hard to see your own things,
Of course.
and so I there's a symptom in MS called clonus, and it causes your leg to bounce rhythmically and uncontrollably. And in the past, every time it would happen, and it usually happens when because with MS, it's the body's very heat sensitive and stress intolerant. So whenever I get too anxious, stressed out, something's going on in life, or I've done too much, exerted myself, or I've gotten hot,
Yeah,
then
of
my
course.
symptoms flare. So,
Mhm.
and that usually turns into this leg bouncing. And normally I would have like grabbed my leg and held it down and been disconcerted by the whole thing and like stop
Mhm.
this bouncing. But it just kind of came to me recently that animals shake when they have stress and they're releasing. So they're like processing through, it's like a tremor response. And in some places, I'm doing tremor response therapy where I'm intentionally putting myself into a position to create a tremor to shake out the stored trauma in the nervous system. But yet, in real life, when my MS is speaking to me and it's saying, I want to bounce, I keep stopping it. And that was
Mhm.
an odd thing to me because I'm like, so when my mind decides that the body's going to do something, I make the body do it. But when my body is speaking and saying, I'd like to bounce now, I was stopping it before. So
Mhm.
flares with the MS can be so varied, and it's the thing that's hard with MS. If you had something where you had nerve damage, say you like cut your finger and the nerves were damaged and they were numb, you would acclimatize to that at some point. But with MS, every hour, every day, every month, every year drastically changes. So I had never have any idea when I wake up in the morning what my balance will be like, what my eyesight will be like, what it will look like by the end of the day. It almost feels like being intoxicated a lot of the time, like very disconnected, like you don't know where your foot's going to land. You don't know how long it'll take for the words to come out of your mouth from the time you think them.
Okay. So on the one hand, you were using the MS as a signal. It was signaling when you had a lot of nervousness, anxiety, you've been depleted, you've have too much you've allocated too much emotion in some place or perhaps hasn't preserved it in others. So it's a signal for you. And then here there's these wild symptoms. What are you doing to navigate these experiences when they're coming up? So you see them as signals, and then what are you doing with it?
Yeah, so I really respect my body now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and this helps, I think, to also because I work for myself and independently now that I can manage my own schedule. And I really learned to put boundaries up. So, one of the things that MS kind of I guess this is a revelation along the way too, is that why would my MS trigger in these circumstances and sometimes erratically? Because sometimes, yes, you're right, it's because I'm having too much stress or
Mm-hmm.
something's gone on and maybe I failed in my diet. But other times things seemed to be okay and I felt okay, but all of a sudden these symptoms would come again. And
Mm-hmm.
I started to look back at like when we're children or when we're younger, parts of our ego will form that serve a benefit at the time. So growing up with chaos of addiction, I learned how to manage everything around me all the time. So it's like being hyper vigilant and worrying about
Mm-hmm.
controlling everything. And an abusive
Yeah.
marriage for 2 decades put me on eggshells doing the same thing. So years later, I'm happy and emotionally, I think, well, but the MS will still once in a while speak to me. And I started to think to myself, perhaps that part of my ego that manages something is still looking for a job to do and feeling irrelevant, like I'm not, it's not purposeful anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as I have this project of MS, which is supposed to be permanent, progressive, and lifetime, that part of me that learned how to manage things will always have something to manage. So when you're asking these symptoms pop up, what do I do as a result of it? Sometimes I would just really talk to that part of myself and just say like, thank you for helping me in the past. Thank you for being there when I needed you. I don't really need you right now. Like if you could please like kind of take a back seat and let a more effective part of me come out and do
Mm-hmm.
something now. And then really honestly listening. When the body is whispering, it's way better to listen than when it is screaming at you with something as dramatic as MS.
Of
But
course.
now I always stop. Like I set boundaries for myself that maybe before in my mind I didn't set those boundaries, so my body forced me to.
Mm-hmm.
Because if my body was sick, I could say to people, I can't help you move this
Mm-hmm.
weekend. I can't do this thing. I can't
Yeah.
drive again. I can't host again because it's not me. I'm not
Yeah.
weak, but I have MS. My body is sick.
And you become addicted to the condition.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
identify with the label very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we go through trauma as children, we adapt to it, as you're describing, and a part of us steps up with that adaptation as a protection.
Yeah.
And later in life, for most of us, we find that we keep finding ourselves in those same patterns. Like you said, you were in the abusive marriage that reflected the early childhood. We keep coming back to it. And yeah, as long as this part of us is active, or these parts that are trying to do these defenses, these adaptations, the same way that we learned when we were kids, we keep finding ourselves back in those spots. And yeah, you brought up a really good point, which is once we start to step outside of those patterns, what happens to that part of us?
Yeah, I
Yeah, a
get
lot of the
panic a little bit.
yeah, and I mean, I've certainly experienced this too, which is we become so addicted to that pattern of suffering. We get hooked on it, and then we think, well, if I let go of this, if I don't have this anymore, then what happens to me? It's like a death. It's a major loss. There's a lot of fear. I've experienced this myself. It was terrifying, and I see a lot of people go through this too. And so here you're saying that this part of you is managing the MS in some ways, and it's really important to recognize, identify that, and then encourage this part to take a back seat rather than drive the car. And yeah, what I find is really learning how to comfort and soothe that part of us that's being active, looking for the thing to work on. And when we do that, then it never has to go away. It can always be here. And we get to continuously engage with it and give it something to engage with or to work on.
Yeah, so I don't even that's why I'm saying with the MS as my healing journey evolved, I don't really push against it and try to overcome it
Hmm.
anymore, right? I don't want another task to solve or a problem. I don't want to fight with myself. I don't want to be in resistance anymore. And I actually think now the MS, like, it was a gift in so many ways. because, as my body broke, my heart definitely healed. And my mind learned how to quiet itself. And because I had to be alone with myself a lot, right? Like, especially I had a relapse 5 years ago. And my family was lovely. They would set me up with lots of drinks that I would eventually spill because my hands weren't that great. They would open Tupperware so I could try to feed myself while they were gone. But mostly I was just by myself. And this is when real meditation happened because I spent probably 3 years where I'm not really walking. I'm kind of crawling around and I can't watch TV or read because I can't see. I realized that now this is what monks or people pay to go live in, 3-month retreats and things. And here I am, I've got it for free. It's my living room floor where I can just be alone and inside with myself. And that kind of meditation where you're just really with yourself teaches you so much. That kind of
Yeah,
silence and that separation from the grind and from the autopilot and from, all the sensory stimulation of the outside world. And I realized I wasn't really as optimistic and cheery as I thought. There was a lot of shadow work to be done when you are just alone with yourself for so
of
long.
course. Yeah. Well, in this situation, it's being forced upon you in a sense. It's not like I mean, we could, of course, say that there was a part of you that made the choice to go into this to bring you back to yourself. And so that this was intentional on some level. There was a part of you that knew a bigger piece of what was happening, and this all played out for a reason. But the level of awareness that you have here, your identity of who you are, is that the MS is happening, and therefore you're going to sit and you're going to focus and you're going to turn your attention inward. So it's not like you chose to go straight to that. Something happened that led you to it. So I'm curious, this could be very challenging, panic inducing for a lot of people, and, activate a lot of resistance, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of fear. So how was this for you when your body's flaring up and you're going to have to sit for, I think you said 3 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the saving grace for me is that I've never believed that my MS was what they said it was. I always believed I could cure it, and that this would be something that was, and even framing it that way to myself in that dark moment where this
Hmm.
is how sick I am, was that I wasn't trying to create a victim story in my head. I was very actively right from the beginning, as soon as a relapse happened, was thinking I'm writing a comeback story. So as I lay
Yeah.
here, I'm already scripting in my mind this movie of my comeback and what it's
Hmm.
gonna look like and how amazing it's gonna feel on the other side when I can say, like, just like when I ran my first marathon,
Yeah.
like
So
that
you're answering
feeling.
the call.
Yeah, and I was fine with
Hmm.
that, and I was and I also would think, I know I'm strong enough, I've had enough things happen to me, and actually, this is not even the worst thing that's happened. The MS is not even topping the top 3 of the worst things in my life, so I think I already had training before this moment to be like, "Well, I got this too," and and this is even when I was talking about the bodies getting more concentric on the way in. The wisdom body for me really is always these simple truths. And I always sum it up to people,
Excuse me.
bless you,
Hmm.
that wisdom really is learning how to live with what is. So, you could, in that moment, I could have been thinking, well, why me? Well, what if I had have
Hmm.
done that? Well, what if this person did this? Or what if I take
Victim
this med?
blame.
Yeah. And then you just stay in this rumination constantly of going back and
Yeah,
forward
of
and
course.
trying to play the scenario. But the truth was, this is what's happened. Like, I'm not going to change the fact that I'm crawling on the floor, but
Yeah.
I absolutely have control over the internal dialogue and the framing I give it. And then, the content of our life is out of our control,
Hmm.
but the context we give it is absolutely within our control. And I
Yes.
knew that in that one of these moments of being on the floor, I'd made a promise, and I wasn't even really religious, but just praying to God in that dark moment, like, if you give me the answer, if you tell me how to heal, I promise I will heal other people. And I made good on that promise because, things got delivered to me in synchronicities to guide me on my healing journey. And I think that that
Yeah.
is divine, like, there is a reason all of that happens. It's not just random, and, whether we think it's our soul contract coming in or whether we think that we just, needed this lesson right now, depending on how big you wanna what lens you wanna look at it. it is meaningful.
Yes. There's an A.H.L. Moss quote where he says that all the difficult things in your life, all the pains and sufferings, they're not chance or haphazard. They're actually yours. They're uniquely yours, and they're created by a part of you that loves you so much that it will make you suffer greatly if you don't reconnect with yourself.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
in hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, I talk a lot about secondary gains. And I know it's a
Hmm.
difficult thing usually when I get to that part when treating a client because nobody really wants to admit that they're getting some benefit out of their suffering, or perhaps they've created a scenario in which suffering is continuing. And I don't ever want it when people are fragile, it seem like it's an accusatory statement, that, oh, you've done this to yourself. Because on a conscious level, most of us are not going to pick suffering. But to really be able to recognize what holds us in the suffering
Hmm.
and
Responsibility,
yeah, and with my
accountability.
MS, I could really think of so many secondary gains right away. Like, what would be the benefit of this? Well, for one thing, I got to leave my corporate job I hated.
Yeah.
Right? I got to leave
Uh huh.
downtown and move to somewhere that's green and beautiful and more,
Uh huh.
withdrawn from everything. I got to homeschool my kids for 2 years because I was
Hmm.
at home every day with them.
Yeah.
And there was so many things, and then like I even mentioned to you before, that manager part of me, I started to set boundaries I had never set before, and
Hmm.
I needed to set them, and it's way healthier to have them, but the MS sort of gave me permission in some ways to
Right.
not be perfect anymore, to not always be achieving something,
Uh huh.
and to not be worried so much about how I was seen by other people because it was very felt once people seen me as like disabled or needing help or kind of less competent. All of a sudden, all that social pressure to be something that somebody else wanted me to be totally disappeared because they
hmm
already kind of wrote me off. They're like, oh, well, she's kind of screwed now. And so it gave me
So,
the freedom to really just be what I
yes.
wanted to be.
Yes. Well, all of these dynamics that you're talking about, the achieving, the being the way that people want you to be, the being perfect, these are all adaptations to growing up in a dysfunctional family.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
I am aware of those things, and I think that all that awareness is the place. I don't like to go back and sometimes review all those things too much because I don't like to, like, give myself a victim story or an excuse, but to be aware of those energetic patterns,
Where
where
they
they
come
come
from.
from, and
Hmm.
once you do that, it's like sometimes I still get triggered by something, and it'll still, get me all in a frenzy, but at least now because I'm so aware of those kinds of shadows and egos in me, I can course correct so quickly. And the MS also in that way is a gift too, because like I have a lot of clients that will come to see me and they never really adopt some of the things I'm trying to help them with because their level of discomfort and pain is only just moderate. So they're living a life maybe for 30, 40 years of disconnected, low level anxiety. They're not happy at their job, their marriage. They're living a life totally unexamined and unlived. But it's not painful enough that they're going to change anything. Where my MS made me really look at my life, it forced me in a way that maybe if I didn't have something so
Yeah.
dramatic, I might maybe never would have had to step up and do the work.
Yeah. That's an interesting way of looking at it right there. Did you ever see the show Westworld?
Yes.
Remember the season one, the finale, where the architect guy, the guy who created all of these, he's trying to bring the AIs into self awareness, and he's using suffering as the tool to make them aware, hoping that if they suffer enough, they will break free from their programmings and make their own choices. And that's
I have.
exactly what you're talking about right here. The suffering hasn't been great enough to bring them into the realm of exercising some choice to liberate themselves from this. I would like to think that we wouldn't have to need to suffer that greatly, but that does seem to be a dynamic. There is some truth to that.
Well, I mean, I think that's why we have duality and why we have the freedom of free will and we have suffering in our world. I don't think that we would be living in a world where we had all of those, fundamental truths around us unless we were supposed to suffer. Like, there's nothing really in life that says we're supposed to be happy and content all the time. And, it even reminds me right now, like my sound bath I just held most recently in February, I talked about self-love. And I think for a lot of the participants that were there, they were thinking, well, we already know what self-love is. We would go get a massage, maybe we're going to have some chocolate and wine today. We're doing sound bath. That's self-love. But really, self-love is so much more difficult than that because just like when you're in a relationship, love isn't enough. You need trust and you need respect. And so to love yourself means that you also need to respect that if you say something, you're going to do it, that you are going to do it. And
Yeah.
that expansion and growth and this development, and that's going to build trust in yourself that you showed up
Hmm.
like your future self will respect your current self for their decisions. But
Yeah.
expansion and growth is uncomfortable. And so sometimes self love is going through a challenge and is doing something difficult in service of a greater lesson and growth on the other side of it.
So, how do you practice self-compassion, self-love? You're giving me lots of concepts of boundaries, of presence and attunement, connection to yourself. Would you walk me through what does it look like? How do you practice this?
Well, I mean, I have so much health hygiene habits in my life. Like,
Hmm.
I chant and I meditate every day and I teach yoga and practice yoga. And,
Okay,
you
so
know,
priorities are important.
well, they're absolutely priorities for me. And even
Yeah.
like, say, today I did my physio workout for my MS.
Hmm.
I really dislike that part. To me, that does not feel like self-love. It feels torturous. I really kind of don't want to do it. But that part is the part I'm talking about. I already
Hmm.
love yoga and I love to meditate. That's not a chore for me. And so it is self-love that's nurturing. It's easy, it's soothing to me. But the neurophysiology, that workout reminds me of that I'm not a runner anymore, that I had difficult standing, that I have a hard time doing things, and it exhausts me mentally, not just physically, because my body won't cooperate. But I know if I don't show up and I don't do that every day, that in a year from now, I won't be as healed as I could be. And so I show up every day. And to me, that is also self love and care
Hmm.
and compassion, even though in the moment it
Yeah.
feels difficult because I know I need it still, even if it feels in the moment like I don't want to do it.
Showing up when you don't want to do something and becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. There's a
Yes,
lot of things that we need to do that we need them. It's for our development, like exercising for a lot of people is essential for their health and it's very uncomfortable to do it. But we can get more and more comfortable with doing the thing that's uncomfortable. So even these exercises, it sounds like they help you.
they do. And I think it's beyond even just what it might be doing physically. It is
Hmm.
this idea of like hermetic stress, which is, for anyone that's not aware of what that is, it's when we do a stress on purpose to just give ourselves a resiliency. So, working out would be an example of we tear the muscle, but then when we rest the next day, it rebuilds. So, we can do that with like cold exposure, with running, with breath work. There's a lot of ways, light therapy.
Yeah.
And that kind of
Sitting with your
hormesis.
emotions.
Sure, and that's another thing too, and then this is what that this hermetic effect for me with this workout is not just the nerves, having neuroplasticity and not my muscles getting stronger. It is the resiliency of knowing that I can still do things that are difficult and seeing the gains that it gets better, but also the agency that it gives me to know that I
Mm,
have so much control over the outcome
agency.
of how things are gonna go in my life. That I'm
Yeah.
not just at the whim of this disease process that's gonna turn out however it turns out. I have to do something. I have to take inspired action every day. But that action, has to come in a balance. And I've talked about both things a little bit here. Some days you push and some days you rest and you don't do something. And that's where the intuition though and listening to your body and your needs because
Hmm.
there are days where I go to press play on the video and then I think, I don't know, not today. Like I didn't sleep good or like there's something else I got to show up for later in today. And if I only have so much energy, I'm going to prioritize. And that also is building the resiliency to set boundaries and to navigate. So it's not all just one thing, it's showing up as you need to in every moment.
Hmm. Setting boundaries with yourself and saying what's important and what's not. And I'm going to stick to this. You're talking a lot about agency, making choices, having autonomy in this situation. So there's some things that are out of your control, but there's a lot of things that are in your control. And this goes back to the beginning of your story when you were first coming into this diagnosis and you were not going to follow the path that was put in front of you, which for any of us who have gone through the medical industry, I think that we come to know that when we follow the path that's put in front of us, it doesn't lead to a good place because the healthcare professionals don't really care about our best interests. Um, so this ability to listen to ourselves or to listen to yourself and to trust in yourself and then to I use the phrase answer the call. It sounds like you're seeing this as a journey, as like the hero's journey in a sense. And this was the call that you had to answer. And then everything else is just participating and engaging with it throughout the entire time that you have it.
Yeah, so I no, knew that yeah, I'm not I grew up my dad also was sick, and I unfortunately, he was during the beginning of the opioid crisis. So, we didn't know for him when he first started taking the meds and the, Percocets and Oxys that that was going to be ruining our family. And so I knew with the doctors that even if they thought they were doing the right thing in the moment, that, they push stuff they don't really know, and all the meds
Hmm.
they were offering me are black box. Like, the risk on the medications is death.
Yeah.
And even if you go back from the things downstream of the death, which that's already bad enough, the other symptoms are terrible that they're talking about. And I thought, well, I don't know how poisoning myself is going to make myself better.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm
there's no
now
liability with it too. These are the consequences and you're signing your life away with it by saying, I'll take this.
Well, I mean, I don't know where you are in Canada. We have free healthcare, but that also means that you wait a ridiculously long time for specialists, for doctors. I don't even have a family doctor. I haven't had a family doctor in 10 years because we don't have any available.
Yeah.
So even if somebody's giving you these medications, who's really following you? Who is really paying attention? Like the one
Yeah.
MS doctor that took me 18 months to go to that clinic after I got diagnosed, which I didn't know what was wrong with me then. Like in 18 months, if it had been a brain tumor, I probably would have died waiting
Yeah.
even for an MRI. And once I start to see her, she's got 50,000 patients, and we're
Precisely.
allowed two questions in 10 minutes once a
10
year.
minutes. Yep.
And
That's how
I
it
mean, what are
goes.
you going to cover in that amount of time? Right?
Yeah.
Like nothing.
And
They
then
can't
they
even.
and then they have all the questionnaires and all the forms and all the things that the state or the government mandates that they have to fill out. So you come in there and this is how it is here. I'm in the States where they have all these things that they are mandated to go through, and it's not even what you need to talk to them about.
No, and I'm not allowed to choose the course of my treatment.
Hmm.
So I'm paying in Canada because of our free healthcare. We pay off of our taxes to be covered
Hmm.
under the because it's not really free. We get taxed to death.
Yeah.
But then I pay private benefits at the time through my companies, and that's costing me however many $500 a month, whatever it is.
Hmm.
And then they barely cover anything with that because you might get like a chiropractor or massage like that covered, but any of the energy modalities that I wanted to do, they're still not covered. So I'm
Precisely.
still paying privately on top of
Hmm.
that. So 3 times I'm paying for a medical system. And then in the beginning when I was first very sick and I had come from a corporate job, I was on disability through the company. And in order to be covered, I had to say I was following their treatment plan.
Hmm.
So they had no problem prescribing $110,000 a year medication, which I never took and I didn't want.
Yeah.
That was okay. They would prescribe that. But when I asked to have $1,000 for an energy device, which my doctor wrote a prescription for,
Nope.
the insurance companies won't cover it,
Yeah.
and
The objectives, the agendas are very clear.
yeah, well, they've gone the biochemistry route, and all of the science is so politicized now. And the lobbying power of these corporations and the
Hmm.
pharmaceutical companies, they have more power than the governments have anyway. They
Yeah.
dictate all the policies. And then you put the
Precisely.
insurance companies in there and you have this like, especially in Canada because our doctors are also paid by the government. So they
Hmm.
can control exactly what the doctors cover, what they prescribe, what they do. Like it's so heavily regulated and corrupted.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I went through something very similar with an illness, and it was the same thing. They start to say, in order for this to be covered, you have to follow the treatment plans. And the treatment plans where they wanted to do surgeries and remove organs, and they wanted me on these really intense biological treatments that were going to affect me for the rest of my life with very low percentages of success. And I said no to all of that. And it was terrifying in that moment because like you're not going to be able to get health care and you got to pay for it. And the amounts like we're I don't know how much you pay, but we pay between like 30 and 40% in taxes. And then we have to pay for all of our premiums and deductibles and out of pockets and all this stuff. And it's ridiculous how expensive it is. Each infusion I was getting, and I did do one of the biological treatments for 3 years and it helped stabilize me. Each one of those was, I think, like $30,000. And I would do them every 6 weeks or 4 weeks at sometimes. And just like you said, these medications are prescribed so quick, so easily, and for too long a period of time. There's nobody who works with you and says, okay, we're going to use this medication to stabilize you. You're going to build the skills, the tools, the resources to navigate what's going on underneath this need for this medication. And then we're going to get you off of the medication. The medications that I've always experienced and what almost everybody that I work with who gets prescribed medications. And I spent 6 years working at a hospital and working in this area in particular. And these medications are for life treatments. That's the phrase that they use.
Mhm.
You're not to get off of these. And when I got off of my for life treatment, these doctors, I mean, their tactics were to one, shame you, to try to berate you and make you feel bad about doing this, and then to intimidate and scare and try to bully me. And I've seen it with a lot of people try and bully you into staying on these medications. The tactics that they use are when we look at what's happening there, it's pretty clear, like, is this really a healing situation? Is this going to lead me to where I want to go to? Where is the place that I want to go to? What does health and healing look like when we have conditions like this? These are all things I think that are really important to ask.
So I only ever took meds a couple times. Right in the beginning when I first got diagnosed with MS. And back then, 20 years ago, they barely had any medications anyway. They told me, oh, 10 years you're going to be in a wheelchair, keep benefits, good luck. And they send you home. So
Good
they had
luck.
3 medications then, and I took one that was an injectable that had no side effects, and it's actually been out on the market for, like, 30 years, and it's pretty safe, but it's also not effective. It doesn't do anything, right? It's except hurt to take it. So I took that for a little bit, and then I stopped because it wasn't working. I was still having a lot of disease activity. And I didn't do any medications for years. And then the one and only time a family member came to an appointment with me, and then I had a new doctor that was a very young, and she is a whippersnapper. She believes she's gonna heal me, and she thought she was gonna do all these great things. So she pushes me to take this new medication they have. And because my family members not been through all of these scare tactic 10-year appointments that I've been through, they're crying now and "Why aren't
Yeah.
you taking the meds? Why aren't you doing this? You have
Hmm.
children. You're a single mom. You're so irresponsible. Do something." Right? So I take the medication. And the medications for MS are you do a lot of testing beforehand because the medication is so dangerous. So they have to test your heart and they have to test all of your lymphocytes and your antibodies. And they have to continue to test you every 3 months because it's so toxic to the liver and the kidneys. So I take these medications for a couple years, and then the doctor just moves to go to the US and doesn't have a replacement. So there's no doctor to prescribe my medication again.
Yeah.
So
You're just
now
on
if you
your
s
own.
and in the meantime, they come out with the FDA has a warning that says, "If you stop taking this medication, you're gonna get worse than you were before because you're
Yeah.
gonna have a rebound effect." And
Yep.
that is exactly what happened. That's what led to this major relapse I had now. And so at that point, my MS never had been that bad. Like, I woke up one morning, I couldn't walk. 2 weeks later, I couldn't hold my trunk up. 2 weeks later, I can't use my arms, I have no feeling in my hands. Then it's my eyesight, my bowels, my bladder, my body temperature. I didn't know that you could die from MS, but that's what I felt like was gonna happen. I was like, "You can't lose this many functions this quick and stay
Yeah.
alive." So again, I thought, well, maybe I'll take some of their medication, because they've already made a mess of me. I injected one time and I felt so bad for my partner because he's not used to these things either because he hadn't ever been a caregiver. He had no idea what to do, how badly I was shaking. That even when he was trying to give me water with Advil, I kept spilling the water on myself, and he didn't know whether to put me in a bathtub or just to hold me. And
Yeah.
I was like, how can that be healing? Right. So then I never took it again after that. But because I told them I was taking it, every 3 months they're supposed to do blood work. A year later, I guess the drug company won't prescribe a year again unless they have blood work on file. So the nurse calls and says, "Go take blood work. We don't have any." I take the blood work so terrified that I'm so healthy now at this point that they're gonna look at my blood work and know I'm not poisoning myself.
Yeah.
So I go to my next meeting and they're like, "Oh, your blood work looks great. Okay, the medication is working so good. See, I told you it was wonderful."
Yeah.
And that happened for I think 4 years where they just kept thinking I took it and telling themselves what a good job they did, not ever
Yeah.
looking at my blood work to see I didn't take it. And I thought, well, how dangerous is it if, like, what if I really was damaging my liver or my kidney? And like
Yeah.
you're saying, it's forever. So, and nobody was watching to see
They
what was
don't. Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. And the scary thing about that is they're giving themselves high fives. Oh, this medication's working. The next person who comes in, they're going to say, oh, we just talked to somebody. This medication works so well for them. You're going to love it.
Well, every time I tried to speak up ever about my side effects, because I lost 40% of my hair after
Hmm.
one injection, and I had that seizure like reaction. And when I tried to report that to the drug company and
Oh,
to the
yeah.
Canadian reporting system and the doctor, they gaslit me so bad. They're like, that
Totally.
is not a symptom of this. That's
Yep.
probably menopause, or this is your
Oh, yeah.
thyroid. Go get
It's
checked.
not
Something else
us.
is wrong.
Yep.
I'm thinking, well, the timing is perfect. And that drug they're giving me is one of the three leukemia cancer drugs.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty sure we know that when you give it for cancer, it can cause hair loss, but for some reason, it happening for
Hmm.
MS is not possible.
Yeah. The gaslighting here is quite incredible. And I mean, and you were describing it when you were having these meetings that you were afraid that they would find out that you weren't taking the medication. This is not a supportive, welcoming, nurturing, healing environment. This is fear based. This is intimidation. This is authoritative. And yeah, the outcomes are pretty clear. And I'm not saying that, the healthcare system's bad for everybody or that medications are bad for everybody across the board. I think that there are places and times where medications and healthcare can be very, very useful. It helped me out tremendously. I got on their biological infusions for 3 years. For life treatment, same thing. They're testing blood work constantly because it can damage your kidney and liver constantly. And I got off of it when I figured out what was going on underneath this, and I was able to address it on my own. But most people don't do that. And that's the missing piece. Again, I think medications, while they can be very useful, they can help us stabilize conditions. If we're suicidal, if our emotions are so overwhelming that we don't know what to do with them, we can't do anything with them. If everything is so painful that we can't get through this, medications can be very useful to help us stabilize. But again, medications are prescribed far too quick, far too easily, and for far too long a time. And just like you said, there's nobody there following through with you, going through it with you and seeing what's happening and helping you build the skills to address what's going on. Why do you need this medication in the first place? And then obviously to get off of the medication. So I work with people constantly who have been on medications. They get prescribed them, and then the doctors are always just increasing the medication load or adding more medications to it, higher doses. And then before you know it, they're taking so many and it's not helping. And they don't know what to do because the doctors are intimidating them into saying this is for life. So I'm curious, as somebody who has blazed your own trail, I think is the term that you used for this. What do you tell somebody who's going through this? If somebody's navigating something similar, what would you tell them in terms of something that might be supportive in terms of navigating this?
So I think that you have to meet people wherever they're at. And if there's some patients that if people come to see me and I was to suggest that, vaccine injury is a thing, or maybe this medication might be you causing something, they might be very resistant to hearing that, and then I shut them off and they're not going to engage anymore. People need to build trust first of all in the person they're dealing with, which is why doctors don't always work anymore because doctors aren't spending time building relationships. And a lot of people, when they just feel listened to, then this is a place where healing begins. And I think with energy medicine, people like it's what you're saying. Like I had had experiences with the medical system that was life saving, right? Like I had a home birth on my first son, and he passed away because this alternative birthing system didn't work in my favor. I had two subsequent C sections. I love the medical system in that regard. Those babies I have now, those children that are teenagers, I have them because somebody did surgery on me. So I think there's absolutely a time and a place. But I like how you're saying that you need to take the time to figure out like acute care is one thing and chronic is another. And this is where the medical system is really failing is chronic. And I can see the frustration with the medical doctors because I face it with people I talk to too. Everybody wants a quick fix. Nobody wants to do the work to change their diet, to change their mindset, to change jobs, to maybe leave your marriage if this is toxic. Like all of these things that are more difficult to do that are the things that probably got you sick and that will get you well. So I understand the frustration of doctors to talk about those things because I will have people to come to see me too and I'll do a biofield tuning or I'll do, a PEMF session on somebody and they think, one session and I've healed them. And energy medicine is not miraculous either. I can't just do one treatment and then you're just going to be, well. We need to build healthy habits and if I put energy into your body, you have to sustain it still by all these other habits on the outside. And I think that, energy medicine is always seems like it's antagonist with the medical system. But I actually see it as a layered approach. So, coming in with mindset and the psychology and your emotions and nervous system and energy work in the body, that is all going to be supportive to any biochemistry you're doing. So, if you are going to see physiotherapy, if you are taking a medication, it is going to be more effective. But if your body has the correct instructions, energy to process that, which means you'll get better quicker and can come off of those meds or reduce your meds. So, it's not about saying, oh, all the meds are bad and shaming people. And also, placebo matters so much here too is that some people that have had a really positive experience in the medical system, they might take that prescription and they might have no side effects and it might work very well for them because they are psychologically bought in to the authority of the doctor and to this system.
Mhm.
I think for those of us that have had bad experiences, we start to build that skepticism and I almost feel like there's something energetically then that meds won't work as well on me because I'm pushing against it now.
Sure, your focus determines your reality.
Yeah, and, like, the nocebo effect is also a thing, right? If you believe it's not gonna work, it's probably not gonna work.
Yeah, belief. Yeah, we have incredible abilities to construct our own experience, our own reality, and belief and mindset and the lens that we look at the world through is very important in terms of dictating what we experience.
Yeah, and that will shape what I wanna call it the reticular activating center. I think that's the term for it in the brain, which is, like, that same idea that if you were gonna buy a white Jeep, all of a sudden all you see is white Jeeps. And
Mhm.
the same will be true with your experience with medical systems, with your own healing. And that mindset is not just whether you believe in energy medicine or you believe in allopathic Western medicine. It is also what you believe that is healing possible and what you believe about your diagnosis and your label and your own agency and sovereignty. And I think that that's why I love to teach people that mostly above all. Like if you come to see me, I want you to start to look at the world in a way in which you have control more than you thought before over your outcome.
Yeah,
And that
agency.
yeah, and that you're going to then take actions towards it. And not just that then you take actions or you try to notice, but to pay attention to all of your wins. So instead
Yeah,
of always saying every day, oh, I'm sore today. Oh, I didn't sleep good. Oh, I'm not, oh, and you
yeah,
complain about the things. What is one way in which today is better than yesterday? And maybe,
yeah.
for some of us, like with MS, that it's really negative. Maybe today you did the stairs one second quicker than yesterday, or maybe you were able to take 3 steps further. It can be very small wins, but noticing all of the times and the ways in which you've gotten better. So it's not now
Mhm.
about all the things you've lost, because when you're always giving yourself this victim list, whatever you look for, you shall find. So
Yeah.
start looking for wins and for victory.
Yeah, being very conscious, aware of what you focus on.
Yeah, and it will become your reality. And this is why I think like gratitude is one of my favorite practices. Like I do a lot of breath work with yoga, and that's a really easy way to just jump in and to change
Mhm.
your physiological state, which will affect your mental state as well. But gratitude is just such an easy and accessible one. And it's
Sure.
something that you don't even need to set aside time to practice it, like meditation or a pranayama breath work. Gratitude can just be incorporated into every single interaction with life and
Mhm.
with other people. And
Yeah.
even not even just for yourself and your own body, but even just small things like the other people in your life and the world. Because I mean, I know we're all terrified in the world. We've had, a roller coaster for the last 5 years at least of like massive news cycles and global chaos and authoritarian, and there's so many things going on that if we only ever see the world through this lens of all doom and gloom and all this negativity, we start to lose trust in ourselves and our world and our community and our fellow man. And it's like maybe if we all stopped and just took a moment to just see all the ways in which somebody held the door for us or somebody let us in
Mhm.
traffic or somebody, all the small things which show us that the world is actually a better place than we think it is.
Sure. Yes. And I think that a lot of times when people start to do this, when they're starting to focus in on certain things, certain aspects of their life, this belief starts to form of, well, all that negativity that's in my life, all the pain, all the fear, all the anxiety, all the anger that I have, that's all bad. I don't want that. I'm just going to focus in on the good stuff. And so then there's this bypass of all the other things that we judge or evaluate as being negative that we don't like, that we want to get rid of. And they don't go away, they stay there, and then they still have some level of engagement that's needed. Do you see this with people that you work with, and what do you do with that?
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, we need, first of all, there is no good or bad emotions. They're all just emotions. Really, they're just supposed to be a message to send us towards or away from things. And sometimes even anger can be beneficial. Like sometimes anger is needed in order to set a boundary or to protect yourself. So to always just label everything as, well, I don't want to feel that because that's, negative, that becomes this idea of like toxic positivity where you're just faking it, which
Mhm.
really isn't authentic. The emotions are all fine. I mean, doing hypnosis and neurolinguistic program, we think a lot about the right and the left sides, the hemispheres of the brain. And the left is this analytical thinking part that likes to label, and it is the more judgmental, the more, critical part of us. But the right side speaks very much, I think, in the body's language too. It's all like symbols and emotions and feelings. And so when we have those things, they, like you're saying, they don't just go away. If we stuff them down and suppress them, they get stuck in our energy field. They show up as like oscillations in the biofield. And those will eventually, at least in my opinion, that's what leads to disease because we're living in this emotional, mental, and then downstream energetic body that creates the biochemistry of stress hormones. So now, if you're living there, you will
Mhm.
have like norepinephrine and cortisol and all of these chemistries in the body, which is now going to bathe the cells in this negativity and cause disease. So one of the things I think with these emotions to let go of them, I mean, the first and easiest one that everybody could just do at home is just get okay with being uncomfortable. And it's not just the pain in your body that sometimes we just wait. We don't run for an Advil every time. We don't try to break a fever. Sometimes we just let it burn off the virus. And sometimes we don't try to get away from the bad emotions, just sit with them. And at the same time that you're sitting with them and you're letting them process through, also understanding that not every emotion, just like not every thought, is true. Like it's
Sure.
okay right now to feel like you want to rage at your spouse. but maybe don't. Maybe hold it in for a moment and process it and let your feelings go through, but then start to pay attention. Because if you only felt like raging once in a while, then you're like, well, maybe that's just because I was in a bad mood. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was just reactive. But if you feel like enraged with this person constantly all the time, maybe that is a signal that you need to pay attention to make an action in the real world. Like maybe you need to change something in your environment as a response to these emotions that keep arising. But you need to first feel them and then distinguish whether they're real emotions, sustained, or it's just fleeting.
Sure. So this is a lot more than just sitting with it, which I think is a very common misconception is that when I have emotions, pain, anger, whatever it is, that I just need to sit with it. But you're talking about actively engaging with it, listening to it, seeing where it comes from, trying to understand why it's here, what the message is, and what is the action or inaction that is causing this or that it needs. So there's a lot more activity and practice involved with working with the things that are here in order to get to the joy, the happiness, the gratitude.
Well, I think that there is like a three-step process. So there's
Mhm,
being, doing, and then having. And I think that a lot of people just jump right into doing and they
mhm.
run on a hamster wheel where it's frenzied activity, they're doing a lot of
Of
effort, but they're
course.
not really getting anywhere. And the
Yeah,
having never really materializes in life.
of
But
course.
if you take a step back and you just be first, and
Yeah,
that's the quiet, that's why meditation is so beneficial and mindfulness practices and disengaging a little bit with the reactivity and the senses and overdrive of all the things around you. Like unplug a little bit, come inside a little bit, become a
precisely.
little more aware of yourself. And when you do that being, then you become inspired in the action that's needed to take. So when you go to do something now, that doing is meaningful, so you kind of
Yeah,
slow down to speed up because you
precisely.
do eventually want to act, but the
Mhm.
action needs to be meaningful, thoughtful, intention. And when you
That's right.
do those two things, the having this life you want is going to materialize in a beautiful way because everything is aligned.
Consciously. You get to you're making choice.
You're the creator.
Yes. And what you're saying is really important, because when we go through stress and trauma, especially at an early age when our ability to navigate it is limited, we only have so many ways that we can respond to it. We can't make it stop. We can't get away from it. So we go away mentally and we disconnect from the things that we're feeling. We disconnect from the present moment. So being is very, very challenging. And doing is actually the adaptation to stay away from being. So when we
Absolutely.
jump straight to the doing, we're bypassing the thing that we really need, which is to come back and to learn how to be present and be with and be connected and attuned with the things that we're feeling and experiencing. When we can do this, when we reconnect with ourselves, then of course, the things, just like you said, the things that we do more in line with who we are, and then the things that we create are absolutely more aligned with who we are.
So I think that this is exactly how my MS manifested physically because it mirrored the inside landscape. When I was younger, I was into escapism. So, when I was young, I coming from a family with addiction, I followed that. I did drugs and alcohol and in that marriage I was in, it wasn't really safe to be present because
Hmm.
the moment actually right now was not safe. So
Yeah,
I really did dissociate a lot from my body. And so I was actively trying to not be embodied because I didn't like being myself. I didn't like being where I was. And then the MS came later where it severed that connection, where my mind and my body can't communicate anymore. And now I'm trying to undo all of that because now I'm intentionally trying to get back into my body for my body to have trust in me again, to build a relationship where it's not about because even when I got rid of the bad surface level escapism, because before I ever had babies and later on in life, like I ended up in university and had a good job and I was clean and I had done counseling, but I still never really was just with myself. I became a long distance runner and then I went for another
hmm,
degree and then another promotion and then another thing. And it was always, even though it looked on the outside like I was living a good life, because people would say, oh, she's so successful. Her house is so clean. Oh, she's so fit. But really in my mind, what I was doing is always just racing. Maybe happiness is around the next corner if I just do this next thing, because I never
Mhm.
celebrated any of those wins. I never felt good in any of those moments. I was still just chasing, and
Yeah.
that was
Seeking.
escaping. Yeah, like, and I think people do it in more benign ways and they maybe don't realize it, but that's what social media scrolling is,
Yeah.
just to distract yourself, because as long as the screen is telling you what to think, what to do, you're not actively creating or participating or being with yourself ever.
Precisely. Yeah, one of the emotional circuits that gets really activated when we go through trauma is seeking, always looking for the next thing to help you feel good, to escape from the pain or to alleviate the pain or to be good enough and to be accepted and have all your connections. And it shows up in lots of ways like that.
Yeah, and I think this is why I'm hitting the last phase in my healing, was when I let go of that striving to overcome the MS, and
Hmm.
just accepting and just surrendering a little bit to it. And what a full circle moment, because when I first got diagnosed and I knew I wasn't going to really follow a conventional path, the first thing I did was went to sign up to study with Zen Buddhist monks in a temple near me. And the first time I was doing the course, it was like, I think, night number 3 of an evening program of learning meditation. And I interrupted the monk during the middle of meditation, and I was like, "When are we gonna learn something?" And he's like, "What is it you wanna learn?" I'm like, "Well, I'm here because I wanna overcome my MS." He's like, "We're not gonna learn anything, and you're not gonna overcome your MS, and just be quiet." And I stopped him again. I was like, "Well, what do you mean we're not gonna learn anything? Like, I thought this was a course. The whole reason I came is to learn something." And he just stopped responding after a while, and it was just quiet, and I was feel like, well, I'm annoying everybody else because 'cause I'm talking. It took probably, 17 years to come back to where I really understood his lesson, where, no, the whole point of what we were doing is just to be quiet and just to be with ourselves, and in
To be
doing that
with ourselves. Hmm.
surrendering, that was where the healing was gonna come about, or not. Maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't gonna come about, but that was just gonna be okay too. Just stop worrying and stop stressing and striving and
Yeah.
see, as you say, seeking. Just sit
Yeah.
here and enjoy the moment.
Well, this seeking is based on a belief that I'm not good enough. So if I could do the thing, if I could be the best runner, if I can get the degrees, if I could learn the practice, then I could do the thing that would be good enough. And yeah, once we can just be, I mean, by rights, we should be born into this world good enough. And we should be cherished, valued, accepted, respected, and safe just for being born. That's how it should be. But that's not what happens. We should be able to rest in our relationships, knowing that our parents would love us and protect us and nurture us, regardless of who we are. But we don't have that. Those fundamental needs go unmet. And so our relationships become conditional. You have to behave a certain way. You have to express your emotions a certain way or suppress your emotions a certain way. You have to meet these expectations or achievements, and then you get the thing. Or your environment's so dangerous, you have to pretend to be a certain way. You have to navigate. You have to pay attention to everybody else's emotions. You have to be small. You have to be agreeable. You have to take care of people. And then you get safe. So we spend our entire lives looking for this. Where's the thing? Where's the thing? When can I be good enough? But no matter how many of those things we accomplish, it's never good enough because we're still not paying attention to ourselves, meaning that we're treating ourselves the same way that we were treated when the pain originated. I'm not good enough, but if I could figure this out, then I might be good enough, but I'm not. I'm going to have to do the next thing. So, really learning to come back and just be here and just, okay, my back hurts right now. That's okay. I'm going to be okay with it. And maybe I'll stretch and maybe I'll exercise it and maybe I'll just pay attention to it and listen to it and see what is it telling me.
Yeah, and, have you ever heard of emotional freedom technique?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so this is something that, I think kind of speaks to that whole thing too. Is like even just witnessing it and just being okay with it, and saying, like, as you're tapping yourself, that everything, like, my kids think I'm weird, but sometimes on the way to school, if they start complaining about, "Oh, my stomach hurts or my head hurts," and I pull over and I make them tap on the side of the road before we go to school. But just that idea that it's just okay, like, the emotional stress of school and of the pressure and all of these things is kind of building up inside, and they're feeling these physical symptoms in their body, and sometimes just enough to just be okay with them and just say, yes, headache, I recognize you, yes, I see you there, I still love you unconditionally, you're still enough. That even just those little acts just kind of like let it just dissipate out of the body, just the
Yeah.
noticing, the witnessing, the holding space for it. And even
Yeah.
for my kids, I think the fact that I pulled over and I'm gonna just be with them for a minute and be like, I'm gonna
Mhm.
witness this with
They're
you, and we're just
important.
doing, because they would come back like they're when they had to go to their dad's house still once we were divorced, it was very hard to know what was happening there and them coming back to my house. And they would come back and one had stomach aches a lot and the other headaches a lot. And I didn't want to always be giving them any kind of medication because I know it's not good for them. So I just bought all of these different like herbs and I put them down and labeled them in my basement. And they were like, skull cap is gonna do this, and rose hip is gonna do this. And whenever they would complain to me, I would just go down and we would make these special little concoctions of teas. And then we would brew it and we would sit down and, I'd stroke their back while I
You
made the tea for
connect
them.
with them.
And it would instantly they're fine. They didn't
Yeah.
really actually physically have something wrong that was causing the headache. They just had tension and stress, and they had worry,
Yeah.
and it would always dissolve their problem, and that's probably what's missing in the medical system too, is
Yeah.
that level of, like, connection and care.
Attunement. See, when we're developing, we don't have the ability to process emotions, for instance. We can express emotions. Every 2-day-old baby is going to express their emotions to you, but we can't process and regulate them. And we learn to do that through the connection with the adults who know how to do that. But what happens when a baby's crying out and their doctor has told the parents, don't hold the baby? Let them learn to cry it out. Let them learn to self soothe. Or when the kid keeps coming to their parents saying, Mommy, Daddy, I'm scared. There's monsters in my room. And they say, there's no monsters. There's no attunement. There's no connection. There's nobody who's there with the experience, teaching the child how to be with the experience and how to go through it. They're all alone and isolated with it, and they learn it's very dangerous to be here. So, here, I mean, what you're doing is really connecting and attuning to your kids and being with them when they're going through the thing. When I do that with my clients and they learn to do it with themselves, it's amazing. Within moments, seconds sometimes, whatever tension, constriction, pain they're feeling, it almost always resolves as soon as we can connect to it and attune to it and be with it.
And to co-regulate our nervous systems too. Like my kids, and I love when they say the things I've said to them back to me. Like sometimes if I'm in the kitchen and I'm stressing about something, one of them will come in and be like, "I think you need a 20-second hug," or "Mom, yoga breath," and I'm just like,
Yeah,
"Okay, yes, thank you." Like I needed that for a minute, just because I don't know why I thought this was such a stressful event. It's just such a simple thing, but I'm just having a moment, and to just know that even now, like they're teenagers that they're having a two-way relationship back where they understand that nervous system regulation and what's required, and it's still hard to self-soothe as a teenager because it's a lot of emotions and hormones at that time. It's like self-individuating, but to see that those skills are, being passed down because it's certainly when you become a parent, it does make you very forgiving of the all the trauma your own parents gave you, because we are so conditioned. And I know that I've said things, I've heard myself saying things out loud to my kids on autopilot, which were said to me.
hmm,
And that you don't always respond. I mean, you always have the best intentions, but sometimes you don't do perfect because we are all still human. And that, if every opportunity we have to correct it and to do better. But I hope that, with each generation that we're getting better at this kind of emotional regulation and this ability to not kind of stuff it and just work your way through it and to, separate. Although
it's
I'm not
very
so sure
important.
now with, like, I've noticed a lot of kids now, and I don't know if it was during just because of the masking and all the isolation times from each other, that their nervous systems are not that, trained or regulated, that
Yeah, they're
it
very
seems like there's a
isolated,
lot of, yeah,
unstable.
reactivity. Yeah,
Yeah,
and maybe social media having an influence on that too, because a lot
yeah,
of their connection is through an avatar now, where you
yeah.
don't get to see the actual, like, when you're in a room with somebody and even somebody else insults somebody or makes a, a snide, underhand comment, you can feel that person's, like, aura or whatever you wanna say, their energy kinda shrink, and everybody in the room can kinda palpitate that and feel the reaction, which you don't really get when you're just, like, online through a headset fighting with people.
Yeah. Yes, there's a lot of challenges being faced right now, and yeah, it's going there's pockets everywhere where the things seem to be going really well, and then you look at a lot of other places, and it's very concerning. I mean, I spent 10 years in Portland, Oregon, and that's it right there, the
Yeah.
disconnect, the inability to be present with what you're doing. It's scary, and it's affecting everybody, and it's in the children, it's in the adults. The adults have it too. Everybody's doing it with each other, and they're just stressing each other out so much. And the way people are adapting to it is by disconnecting from it, and then it gets more intense and more intense each time it comes around. But anyway, tell me, where can people find your work, the things that you do, anything that you've published or put out there? Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so my book is Unlearn Dis-ease, Relearn Well-being, and it takes you through that healing layers of the five koshas and kind of entering into each phase of healing from a different angle, not as a protocol or as a ladder, but just as this holistic way of looking at health. And then my website is energyovermatter.com. And there, people can book services with me with all kinds of different energy modalities, or just jump into free healing circle, which is the second Wednesday of every month. And social media
Terrific.
is all the same, energy over matter.
Very good. I'll have all those linked in the show notes. Before we stop the recording, is there anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, I always just like to leave people with this message of sovereignty, agency, and hope. Because I know that when you get a diagnosis that what you're given at that moment is usually pessimistic and usually fatalistic. And, as much as people will go onto Google and they'll search all of these symptoms and get the worst case scenarios, start going out and looking for all of the spontaneous and miraculous healing, for all the people that came before you that had the same condition that did work through it and that did find other solutions. And, it's not one size fits all just because something works for somebody else. It might not work for you, but then stay curious. So keep looking, keep searching for something. And if it's a dead end, stop. Don't see it as a failure and then stop your journey. That's not a failure. It's just one opportunity more towards the truth. So you change direction, change course, but don't ever stop, um, you know, seeking for balance and alignment again.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you for having me.